Do not be deceived by the shabby hat, for beneath it lies the mind of a top businessman. Bernard, a young black boy who shines shoes, intentionally sets up his stall in front of the bank to attract wealthy white customers. He works slowly, not for the meager wages, but to eavesdrop on the financial secrets of the whites as they wait. After they leave, Bernard carefully records their conversations in a notebook, seeking the valuable financial knowledge they possess. Even at a young age, he dreams of becoming a banker, despite the severe discrimination against black people in Texas in 1939. Though his father discourages him, Bernard remains determined. 15 years later, he moves to Los Angeles with his wife Eunice and children, where racial discrimination is less severe, and he decides to start his own business. Bernard, his wife Eunice, and their children are forced to live in a dilapidated utility room belonging to one of their relatives. However, Bernard promises his wife that they will move out soon. He starts working as a real estate agent and scours the city for houses for sale. After keen observation, he realizes that the black community in Los Angeles is overcrowded, while the white community still has many empty houses. Black people have rental needs and financial strength, but there is no market for them. Bernard sees this as a great business opportunity for real estate speculation and renting. One day, he spots a white-owned apartment that is not in great condition, but he sees the advantage of its location, which is adjacent to the black area. He approaches the owner and proposes to buy the apartment. He offers $30,000 upfront and promises another $5,000 when he rents out all the rooms. Although the owner admires his idea, he doesn't want to do risky business. Bernard expresses his understanding and prepares to leave, but he glances at the owner's calendar and notices that it was given by a local bank manager. An idea comes to his mind, and he heads to the bank to find the manager who sent the calendar. However, the manager's secretary, who discriminates against black people, refuses to introduce him to the manager. Undeterred, Bernard waits for a few hours at the bank door and finally stops the manager when he comes out. Bernard tells the manager that he knows one of his VIP customers and that the business he wants to do will benefit him. He hopes the manager can approve a loan for him. However, the bank manager rejects him without thinking. That night, Bernard receives a call from the apartment owner, who asks him if he used his name to try to get a loan. Bernard has no choice but to apologize. Unexpectedly, the owner doesn't blame him but admires his belief that he will not give up until his goal is achieved. The owner decides to guarantee the loan for him, and Bernard gets the first loan of his life from the bank to buy the property. As the old white lady returns from her shopping trip, she finds a black man at her door. With a sharp voice, she demands to know what he is doing there. The black man, Bernard, calmly explains that he is renovating the apartment building. The old lady responds with a mean face, saying that workers like him should be careful. But Bernard assures her that he is the owner of the building and will take good care of it. Speechless, the old lady goes home angrily and calls the police. They arrive soon after and question Bernard, accusing him of pretending to be the owner and contradicting the old lady. However, Bernard is prepared for such trouble and shows the police a copy of the real estate certificate, proving that the house belongs to him. The police realize their mistake and leave in a huff. That night, Bernard returns to the apartment building, and the old lady at the door once again tells him to get out. But Bernard calmly explains that he is not a renovation worker, he is the owner. The old lady is left dumbfounded, and a few days later, she moves out angrily because she doesn't want to live in the same building with black people. Bernard takes advantage of the situation and rents out her house to a black lady, as he had foreseen that the black tenant market is huge. Sure enough, the building quickly fills up, and Bernard gives the negotiated follow-up payment to the former owner. The former owner admires Bernard's business savvy and offers to start a business with him. Bernard chooses the house and calculates the income, while the old owner negotiates the transaction and signs the contract with him. As they conduct business together, white people are unaware that they are doing business with black people. The cooperation between the two goes very smoothly, and they make a lot of money immediately. Bernard moves from an apartment block to a mansion, providing a happy life for his beloved family. He chooses not to retaliate against discrimination but instead plays by his own rules, aiming for rational economic decisions and maximum profit. However, challenges can arise at any moment in life. A few years after working with Bernard, the former owner of the company passes away, leaving his equity to his wife, who severely discriminates against black people and refuses to cooperate with Bernard. She offers to buy Bernard's shares at a low price and threatens to sue him if he disagrees. In an era where whites often receive favor in litigation, Bernard knows he needs to prove his cooperative relationship with the old owner in court. He considers the bank manager as a witness, but the manager has already sided with the widow, leaving Bernard extremely disappointed. As he stands in the neat and tidy bank building, Bernard sees discrimination all around him and a bold plan gradually forms in his mind. There are 4 banks in the building, and each one has closed doors to black customers. Bernard decides to buy the entire building and show them that he will not be discriminated against any longer. Bernard reaches out to Joe, a black real estate developer in Los Angeles, and shares his plan. At first, Joe thinks Bernard is crazy, as the land price of the building is extremely high and no black person has ever bought land in downtown LA. However, after discussing the idea, Joe realizes that Bernard is a thoughtful rationalist, and his plan could work. By owning the building, Bernard can force the banks inside to serve him, and they dare not refuse to give him a loan or disclose real estate trends to him. Joe is shocked but ultimately believes the plan will be successful. As wealthy as he is, Joe knows that even he is subject to white people everywhere. With this plan, he and Bernard can step on white bankers on white land and make more money. Despite their ambitions, black people are still unable to negotiate transactions directly with white people. Bernard realizes he needs a white agent and decides to train Matt, an honest and ambitious man who lacks experience. With the help of Joe, Bernard teaches Matt golf, high-class manners, mathematical thinking, and real estate valuation. Matt quickly becomes proficient at golf, and during a game, he can calculate real estate valuations like a promising entrepreneur. At a golf club, Matt meets the owner of the bank building, arranged by Joe. The conversation goes well, and Matt gets a chance to buy the building. However, he doesn't know how to do it, so Bernard helps him make all the preparations, including counting the number of lights on in the building, calculating the vacancy rate, and getting the estimated value of the building. Bernard prepares all the numbers and asks Matt to memorize them before meeting the owner. During the negotiation, Matt shocks the big boss by giving exact numbers, making them think he's a math genius. As a result, Bernard gets the building for $1.56 million, less than its initial price of $2.4 million. Bernard and Joe's real estate careers rapidly expand, breaking the strict zoning of Los Angeles's black and white segregation. They even get received by the vice president. In 1963, Bernard takes his family back to Texas to visit his father, who is proud of his accomplishments. While walking around town, Bernard and his son meet a young shoe-shining boy who only works on the shoes of white people. This incident touches Bernard, awakening his sense of responsibility to his community. He decides to change the status quo and help the black community in his hometown get better housing. The next day, Bernard visits Joe and proposes that they should buy the Mainland Bank in Texas. Joe thinks it's a crazy idea due to the severe racism in the area, but Bernard presents compelling reasons to make the purchase. Eventually, Joe agrees to help Bernard, and they recruit Matt again to be their frontman. They meet with the bank owner, Robert Florence Sr. and Jr., to discuss the numbers of the deal. Despite Florence Jr.'s suspicions, Sr. sells the bank to Matt and his partners. With the Mainland Bank acquired, Bernard gets to work helping African Americans in town get approved for loans, striving to help his fellow men get a fair chance at housing and money-making opportunities. Things go well for a while until Florence Jr. starts investigating the loans approved by their bank. One day, Florence follows Matt and meets up with Bernard and Joe. He confronts them about the loans and threatens them with a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department, which will inspect the bank's operations in 1 month. As Florence Jr. leaves, the guys discuss their next moves. During that time, Matt suggests buying another bank and transferring the problematic loans from the mainland to that bank. They discuss the purchase of the Bank of Marlon Moore, and Bernard expresses discomfort with the idea of Matt running the new bank. Eventually, he settles with letting Eunice keep an eye on Matt. In the end, Matt gets to run his bank as he wanted. The next day, he meets with a lawyer and starts signing loan contracts on his signal. Sometime later, Matt receives a call from Florence Jr. regarding clients who want to withdraw all their money from the mainland. To make matters worse, a federal bank examiner arrives at Marlin to help Matt. Bernard forces himself to dress up as a janitor to get close, but during the meeting, the examiner discovers a critical problem with several loans. Bernard is in disbelief that the absurd loans got approved. Eventually, they learn that it was Florence Jr.'s doing all along. While rushing to run his bank, Matt skipped protocols and used a lawyer recommended by Florence. Through that, Florence was able to sneak in the problematic loans. Sometime later, Bernard and Joe tell Matt that the most rational move they can make is to walk away from the Bank of Marlin. Unwilling to let his bank go, Matt makes a move without letting his partners know. Joe learns about his move the next day and rushes to the Mainland Bank with Bernard to confront Matt about the loans. Meanwhile, Florence watches the spectacle with a proud look on his face. Bernard tells Matt to get their books, but it's too late. The federal bank examiners arrive to revoke the Mainland Bank's license to operate. While leaving the building, the FBI arrests Bernard and Joe. Bernard tries to stand his ground, but it's a futile struggle. Bernard and Joe eventually meet with their lawyer and discover that their case has been delayed due to racial politics in the country. Meanwhile, Matt speaks with Senator McClellan about testifying against his partners in exchange for his freedom. That night, Matt considers his options and ultimately decides to follow McClellan's advice and testify against his partners at the Senate hearing the next day. Later that day, Bernard meets with McClellan and is given an ultimatum: take an immunity deal and confirm Matt's testimony, or go to jail by saying whatever he wants. Bernard ultimately decides to speak out about the racial discrimination he has experienced. As a result of the hearing, both Bernard and Joe lose their fortunes and are sentenced to federal prison. While Bernard and Joe are in prison, Florence Jr. purchases the mainland bank for a fraction of what Bernard and Joe paid. Meanwhile, Matt is never charged with a crime. Years later, Bernard and Joe are released from prison and Eunice is surprised to see that they seem happy despite their loss of fortune. It is later revealed that the two men owned properties next to each other in the Bahamas. Matt had called Bernard the night before his testimony and told him about the senator's deal, apologizing in return. Bernard asked Matt for a favor before the government could seize their assets. The movie concludes with the revelation that Bernard and Joe's residential properties were instrumental in the fight against housing segregation and they still own two mansions next to each other in the Bahamas.